Hello everyone. I know it's been kind of a slow month, hasn't it? That's the work-life hobby balance, but I'm pretty excited about the video I have for you today. We're starting off a little bit different because you've seen this on the channel before. This is the Rotorious Zoot, and it has got a Caddx turtle in it, and it is super light. Let's take a look. The star of the show are these 1404 4850 kV Superman motors from Airblade UAV. Running on these Biblade HQ 3030 props, Caddx turtle as mentioned, Diatone Mamba flight stack, Ready-Made RC Cricket Nano VTX, Luminaire Axie circular polarized antenna, Random RJX battery strap. It weighs just a little over 110 grams. With the 4S550 I've been flying it with, it weighs just over 182 grams. Arms are 2 millimeters thick, looks like 7.5 wide. The arms interlock right under here. Bottom plate is also 2 millimeters. Top plate looks like 1.5 millimeters. Motor post to motor post, I'm getting about 148 millimeters. It uses 25 millimeter standoffs. So before we get started here, look at that wind. And you're probably thinking, why didn't you just wait for a better day? Well, I did. I've been flying this quite a bit off and on. I've had this kit kind of built up since February, and I've been tinkering with props. I was actually running 2.5-inch props on this up to about 2 weeks ago, and I switched to these Biblades, and I found that I really enjoyed them. And you do lose a little bit of the cornering aspect, especially when you're flying in a space like mine. The cornering can be something that I really miss. But I found that I adjusted, just like in many things. I think we can adjust to these things if we give ourselves ample time to adjust. You know, if we only fly 2 or 3 packs to a change, we're not likely to like it. But if we maybe give it 6 to 15 packs, we can come around. So I was pretty happy with this kit. These can be pretty hard to get a hold of. I think Rotorious, as far as their shop goes, they're still in a work in progress. I think there was a transition between one person to another. So if you go to facebook.com RotoriousSFPV, that will be your starting point, and I think you need to direct message Eckerd Wagner in order to get one. When I ordered right from the website. It was operational at that time at RotoriousFPV.com. Right now it looks like either all the pages have been removed or something else is going on with the website, because you get page not found whenever I go to any of the previous links or the website that I had bookmarked. But I do think they use a very high quality carbon, and I like the design. I know Aaron Ciotti, I think he is, or used to be, a sponsored pilot from RotoriousFPV. Aaron comes by the channel from time to time. Ciotti FPV. He has been a microflyer, and I think he still enjoys micros from time to time, but I think he's kind of moved on to bigger spaces and bigger props and running GoPros and getting some of that sweet juicy footage. But as you can tell with these Biblades and these motors, I really like this combination. And you might be a little bit curious about why these motors, and it's because they weigh under 9 grams. And that is a big deal for me when I wanted to come in light, because I wanted something that I could kind of rip around, I could fly more aggressively, that I also had a Caddx turtle, that also gave me some camera protection for the turtle, but also didn't get the camera protection in view. And gave me a pretty good flight time along with that performance. You know, I found that these flyovers of the house were pretty dang good for a 1404 running the 3-inch prop. I thought the acceleration at the bottom end, the height that you get at the top end, and the time it takes to get there is good. I also found the flight to be quite smooth. I think I could cruise from this for well over 5 minutes, because we're going to get 3.5 minutes of flight to flying the way you see here. You will, if you pay really close attention to certain part of the footage, you will see that there is a bit of jello at the extreme ends of the throttle. And I'm not certain if that is because of the 3D printed mount for the Caddx turtle or not. And that is not their 3D printed mount, that is my own 3D printed mount. It does come with various 3D parts, but because I was going to keep the weight down so I could use a battery to get me the flight time I wanted, I didn't add any of the 3D printed parts. You know, it comes with motor protectors, it comes with antenna mounts, things of that nature. I just use the old style ways of just using zip ties. And I guess I'm kind of risking the motor protection side of things. I figure that's my fault if I break a motor, because I can't see the 3D printing doing anything to actually protect the motor if I, you know, wang a pole or a tree or a brick or something of that nature. But I was super impressed with the performance, and it gave me the flight time I was looking for. This is one I'm going to keep around. and we're going to go back to the desk and we're going to talk about some of the finer details here. Again, this is the battery I was flying, and I only show this to you because it comes up in just about every video that I get asked about the battery that I used. And I did use this GNB 4S550, and I did fly the 525s, but I found on the 550s I got about 20 more seconds of flight time, so I thought for the weight offset that it still handled it pretty well, so I adjusted my tune ever so slightly, and I flew these packs. I've got about 8 of these packs, so I would charge them up and go run them around the yard. And previously I was talking about how I'd changed props. I had actually changed props between the typical Gem Fan 2.5-inch props. I had used the other Gem Fan 3-inch bi-blades as well. I didn't care for them. And these Azure props, I like how these Azure props sounded, and I got the cornering out of the tri-blades that I wanted, but I didn't get the flight time out of that I wanted. So when I came back to these, I got them almost 40 seconds more flight time going with a larger or longer prop that's in a bi-blade configuration. And yeah, you see that right? I did toilet tank the battery. I found that that gave me the control. It added a little bit of that cornering that I felt I lost when I moved away from the tri-blade. And so I toilet tanked, even though I'm not using a long version of the battery, I did toilet tank the battery in there, and I felt like it gave me a little bit of that cornering maneuverability that I was looking for. I didn't add anything to the bottom to protect any of these screws. I would suggest that you do that, because if you do land on concrete enough where you go sliding, these things will wear down. And while we're at the bottom, hopefully you can see that these interlace. I don't know if I can get enough light on these edges, but you should be able to see right down here how they file the carbon down, or cut the carbon down to where they lay hand over hand, and then they come in flat, and you run a screw through there, and we've got the little top nut screw right down there, if you can see that, if I'm getting my screw on it. That self-tightens or self-taps into the carbon to keep itself tight. So it's a very minimalistic design, but it's actually, in my opinion, well thought out, well laid out. We have the arm mounts right back here and right up here. You can use the arms in either the front or the back. It doesn't matter. They're interchangeable. You can see the cut's the same. You can run the bottom plate either way. Again, it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is the top plate. Obviously, we have a cutout here to help our camera get some camera angle, and it is tight. It's very tight. You see there on the bottom, I used a 3D printed piece to bring my ESC just down as far as I can. If you look in there in the front, that connector is just about touching, or it is touching the carbon. And then we have to be careful about that nut in the back to make sure it does not touch as well, because then we could end up with a short and some sadness. But I got everything in there, and I got everything in there with a little bit of room to spare. Hopefully you can see right through here that my strap is not resting on the Caddx turtle. It is resting a little bit on my receiver, which I just slid in here along the side. You may be looking at my strap and wondering what this is. It's just simply heat shrink, and the only reason I put that in there is as the battery moves, as I tighten batteries and stuff, I didn't want any of this felt on the strap to possibly snag a component on the turtle and pull it loose. So I just put a length of heat shrink through there. It just happens to be clear in order to help ensure that that felt does not snag a component. You can see right here I used a little bit of foam tape to secure my VTX, which is that ready-made RC Nano Cricket. That does have smart audio. It also has the MMC connector, and that's the one area I could have saved some space. I could have used a TBS Unify Pro Nano 32. The price on the Nano 32 is only $5 more than the Cricket, so that's something that you might want to weigh when it comes down to your build. You can use a UFL connector on that Nano 32, whereas this one requires the MMCX. It does have smart audio, but it also does not go up to the power rating that the Nano 32 does. The Cricket only goes up to 200 milliwatt versus the Unify Pro Nano 32 goes up to 400. So that's something to keep in mind in your build. You could have went and spent another $5. If you choose to build like I did, you could have spent another $5 on the 32, the Nano 32 from TBS, and then saved a little bit of weight. But you can get these antennas in this long format as well. And you might be curious about this long antenna. Well, I had to choose that because I had to put my VTX up here. You know, I could have squirreled my VTX in there, but I worried about having a top mounted plate and having a crash, or really just the shift in the machine. You know, how powerful is it? Will it push down on this board? And as you can see here, it really doesn't. I'm putting some pretty good pressure on there. It's remarkably stiff here. I was really concerned about how stiff it would be here in the middle, and that's why I made some of the choices that I did with my VTX, my mounting, and my length of the antenna. You could, of course, do it a little bit different. Maybe save yourself 3-5 grams, possibly, depending upon how short of antenna you can get or make, and the VTX and the wiring, and You know, I went looped around. I would have saved myself maybe a gram or two by just going direct to the solder pads. Somewhere else you could have saved weight. Maybe a little shorter on these. Maybe a little shorter battery lead. There are a number of things. So I think if you wanted to challenge yourself for an ultralight HD build, you could go this route and maybe get it down to 100 grams if you're really looking at every little component and the length of wire. You know, I didn't do a great job on my length of wiring, and I still came in around 110 grams. Of course, part of this, I want to stress this a lot, is that motor weight matters when it comes to those crashes. Well, it comes to performance too, but when you have more weight out here on the end and you hit something, or you're tumbling through the air, the more weight you have out here, the more susceptible you're going to be to damage throughout the arm. And that's why this is important. If you were to go with a traditional, and they do have traditional arms for 1406, 1407, or the typical 12x12 mounting pattern of motors, and that arm is thicker. So if you're looking at the 9x9 and you want to go with a different sort of motor, say you want to go with a T motor or something like that, it's the 1100 series motor, you could definitely do that. I would think you'd want to go something like 1108. I don't think you're going to get the flight time I'm getting here, because I think the 1404 is going to be pretty efficient. Now, I do have the higher KV 1404. I believe there's another version of this. It comes in a slightly lower KV version. I'm not seeing it in the moment on the website, but stock on these motors can be rough. You know, if you want a pair of these and you see them, you better click the buy button in order to get them, because I know that when I ordered, it happened to be right after Mr. Airblade posted to a Facebook group, and I hopped right over there and I bought a set of myself. Yes, I did buy them. I buy a lot of stuff here on the channel. Not all of it makes to a video, but this was a good time. I enjoyed this. This is one I'm going to keep. Like I said, I think this is probably my most diverse HD version of a quad that I have. You know, I can go pretty aggressive with it. I could cruise, I think, with this. I think it'll fly pretty smooth. I could get an ND filter on here too. There's space around the lens where I can get an ND filter, and I've been experimenting with that a little bit. I did some runs on an ND filter, and this blue tack from Bostik, this stuff works pretty dang good. I haven't had any problems with my ND filters getting lost. And I think the gig is that this stuff is flexible, so it doesn't necessarily get to a point where you have an impact and it can't flex and give away. It just continues to stretch out, and then your crash is over with. Hopefully you don't have a real big end over end, 30-meter crash. But I used some of this stuff on an ND filter, and I had 2 crashes, and it stuck right on. I did have to adjust it after the fact, but the ND filter was still attached. And I only used 2 little bits. I used a bit on the top, a bit on the bottom, because it's really the only places I could get my fingers to kind of push it down and smush it in there. So if you're running ND filters on your Caddx Turtle, you might want to pick up some of this blue tack from Bostik. It's not actually blue. It's kind of funny stuff. It's kind of like, well, if I get the camera to focus here, well, it won't focus, but you can see it there. Yeah, I've got a big ball of it. I've been using this stuff over and over and over again for all sorts of, holding different wires and doing different little duties that we have to here in quad building. But if you're using tape to try to keep them on, I just don't think tape will work very well. Now, I didn't stick with tape because I've already run blue tack on a previous when I did the testing for the ND filter, and I did have a few bumps, and I noticed that the ND filter didn't come off. And so that's what made me think, well, let's try the ND filter on this and just fly it around. It was one of the many delays in actually bringing this product or this review to the channel. So again, if you want to get in on one of these frames, you need to go to facebook.com/RotoriousFPV. That is RotoriousFPV. And you need to send a direct message to Eckerd Wagner, ECKEHARDWEGNER, in order to get your frame until they have their web shop going. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in the section down below. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.